All right, guys. Hey, it's Jonathan Edwards here. Welcome to another video or an audio, depending on where you are. But listen, a disclaimer, as always, I work with aspiring athletes and their families. These are families who've got big athletic dreams and they're really go for it. My advice is geared towards them. So with that in mind, some of that advice may not rub you the right way if you are not as into it or committed. If you aren't willing to take 100% responsibility for your athletic experience, if you're going to blame coaches, blame the weather, blame something other than yourself, it probably isn't the advice for you. So if you're going to hang out, that's fine. Leave appropriate comments where necessary. But again, just a little disclaimer, this advice isn't for everybody. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Let's get started. Moving on. Question number 2 tonight. This came from a hockey mom, but I know a lot of my lacrosse. So this came from my hockey mom, but I know a lot of my lacrosse families are going through this right now. Got some basketball families going through, but pretty much every sport has like summer stuff going on. And what everybody, and these have probably been coming for a while for you, depending on how deep you are in your sport, but you're going to get requests for, hey, there's this event coming up, right? We're going to have coaches, we're going to have, it's going to be this whiz bang event and teams from all over the country and coaches, blah, blah, blah. The pitch is always the same. And it breaks down to this, that we are basically inviting you to come showcase your talents in front of a handful of people who you think you need to impress to get to the next level. Right. So whether that's to play in college or it's to make a travel team, in the sport of ice hockey, just for some perspective, there's camps and clinics all over the time and all the time, all over the place. And parents shell out thousands of dollars to go to them. And then they wonder why their athlete isn't getting any notice or they're not getting noticed and they're not getting any love back. And that's really what this is all about, right? You showcase your talents and you're just looking for a little love on the other side, right? If you're not getting the love, you're kind of going, what the hell, right? So the idea here is like, what recruiting events or things like this should you go to and when? Well, I want to give you a little bit of a different take on this, and one that kind of flies in the face of conventional wisdom, and one that also will, how should I say it? It doesn't make people happy when I say this stuff. This is why I don't get invited to talk to too many groups. but here you go. So the deal is that if you're a talented athlete, if you're above average, and I'm sure for everybody listening to me now, you either have one or you coach one or you're around some. But the idea is that if you're talented and you're above average, you will always have a place to go play, right? There will always be a flyer in your mailbox, an email in your inbox, like whatever, saying, hey, come showcase your skills. And that will lead to what you may know is the term called FOMO, like fear of missing out. Okay. So with fear of missing out, the idea is like, oh my God, it's like before you knew about this thing, you were totally chill. Like you were good. You had your Starbucks, you were sitting in the car, enjoying the afternoon, thinking about maybe going to the mall. And then you check your phone and there's an email that says, hey, we're inviting your athlete to this event halfway across the country. It's going to cost you a few grand and all the best people are coming. Are you? So you have to kind of defend yourself like right away. You have to remove all emotion. And I'm giving you permission right now to go like, all right, we're going to look strategically at all of this now. How does this fit in? So I wrote about this in my book, in An Athlete's Guide to Winning Sports and Life, the idea that more is not a plan. Okay. But a lot of people think it is, right? And so when more is a plan, you can go to more training or more recruiting events, or you can go to, more strength and conditioning or whatever. More is the plan, but more is not a plan. So you can't fall for that, right? So what I want you to do is understand, all right, where am I in my athletic development? All right. Now, at a certain point over that time, so when we call this training age. So there's 4 ages to every athlete. One of the ages, so there's chronological age, meaning your athlete is like 12 or 14 or 18, right? And they were born 18 years ago, right? Then you have biological age, and biological age, they may be like 16, but they have the body of a 20-year-old, or they're 16 and they have the body of a 12-year-old, right? That can happen too. So then you have psychological age, which means like, okay, your athlete is 16, but they act like they're 2, right? And then the last one we look at is training age. So training age is, well, how long have you actually been participating in your sport? Or if you've played other sports and those sports have helped you develop in this sport. So let's say you're a football player, but you only started playing football like your sophomore year of high school. But before that, you did CrossFit and you played soccer, or maybe you were a gymnast when you were younger. All that stuff adds up, right? So training age is not just for the sport. It can actually be stretched a little bit based on what other things you've done prior to that, right? So also, like, use that football example. Like, let's say you're a football player, you start playing in your junior year of high school, but you're like 400 pounds and you run like a 4.240. Like, you're just a stud muffin, and they're like, we'll take you no matter, even if you have, we'll teach you how to play. And that's really the truth about most sports, is that the better athlete you have, every coach will go like, oh God, if I could just turn that kid into like it happens to Usain Bolt, right? Wins the 100-meter dash, and then he's signing a pro football contract, pro soccer contract, right? So that's just proof of that. So what happens here is, like, your athlete has a training age, a training window, and this let's call it an interest window, where there are, like, we've all heard stories of kids getting recruited when they were like 8. And you get some Instagram kid and he's running like football drills, and they're like, oh my God, he signed with Alabama. And that's just kind of a marketing stunt, whatever. But the truth is that there are windows, depending on the sport, where athletes kind of start to pique people's interest. Let's put it that way. You have to be aware, and it's really helpful to have like an unbiased, like, third party to help you assess your athlete and say, hey, okay, this is where I think your athlete stacks up in relation to the sport that you're going after, right? So it doesn't make sense to think like, okay, like, let's say your daughter is 6 feet tall, and she's 14, and she's getting interest to play basketball, but you compare it to like a gymnast, and who at a much younger age is getting to that world-class level, right? That sort of thing, or figure skating or things like that. But my point is that you've got to be very cognizant of, like, where are we? The hard part comes when an athlete is when you feel like your athlete is aging out of that window. Okay, so I moved to Canada 21 years ago, and from Boston. And when I got up here, so I played hockey in Massachusetts, and kids there in Massachusetts would play high school hockey, play a little college, sometimes play all of college, then go pro. Now we have junior hockey, which is more popular, or I should say it's more prevalent now. And when I moved to Canada, it was like, if you're not playing, if you're not getting into junior hockey when you're like 15, you should just quit now. Like, so that's a very different attitude. And so you got to be careful, like, where you sit there and realistically where you are. But the idea is, like, once you start getting into that window, you have to decide, like, is my athlete kind of up to speed with all of these other athletes kind of in their age group? Now, what's tough about that is that if your athlete is like all in, knows that if they're confident in like who they are and their development, you can take them to an event where they just get destroyed. Like, they just lose everything. Like, whether, their goalie, they're letting in pucks, or they're just getting run over by kids who have matured biologically. Okay. If you've got the resources and your athlete has the mentality, you can go to an event and go, hey, that was a good experience. We learned a lot. Now we're going to go home and get to work. Other athletes, though, are going to get to a point where they're really trying to get out in front of people, right, and make a name for themselves. But here's where things kind of go a little bit differently than what people think. And I'm going to cover this in more detail in our third question today, but I'll just cover it a little bit now. This idea that people think that they're supposed to go out and be seen. I call this like sports Tinder. It's like you're out there. It's like you're dating. It's like Bumble for athletes, right? It's like, oh, I like that one. I like that. No, I don't like that one, right? And the idea is like you're just going to kind of show up, and someone's going to come with a magic wand and go, "I pick you." And that happens. It does happen, but in reality, your athlete needs to be proactive about where they want to go and who they want to go with. And so if you are looking at, if your athlete loves a certain school or loves a certain program and they want to really go there, your athlete needs to kind of help like guide that and go, all right, we want to do this. And that carries more weight, right? So in the college recruiting process, the idea is that, a college coach really wants an athlete who like wants to is a good athlete, right? Is good at their sport, has the grades to go to their school and wants to be there, right? Because if they don't want to be there, then all recruiting efforts are lost. And this is why, like, if your athlete is just going to events hoping to figure it out, you're probably wasting your money, right? You'd probably be better off taking that investment on an event like this and reinvesting it into strength and conditioning work or skill work, right? So physical, technical, or tactical ability, investing it there, because then by the time they come back to that recruiting event, then they're going to be better off and they're going to make the most of that event, right? So that's really important to understand. And so you have to be mindful of like where you are in that process, or else it's just kind of like, hey, we went to this recruiting event, nobody called us, or we just got form letters and form emails, but nothing's happening. Well, here's the deal. Being seen is a byproduct of being good. So even if you go to a recruiting event, those recruiting events make a lot of money for coaches, right? They are a business. They do serve a purpose, though. People do get kind of seen and festered out from under the radar. But the idea, though, is that of those players that are the top in the pool at those events, they're already known. So you can go to an event like that, play against some really great competition, get video, and then be able to show, like, let's say, how you stacked up against somebody. Like I had an athlete years ago who went to an event in Maryland, got a chance to play against one of the top defensemen in the country, schooled this defenseman, and my phone lit up with college coaches looking for this kid. Right? Who is this kid? What kind of kid is he? Is he a good kid? Like, what are his grades like? Those sorts of things, right? So you can go to these events and actually get an experience like that and get it on a recruiting tape or some videotape, post it on YouTube, and that goes a long way, right? That it goes a long way. So keep that, it does happen, but don't fall into fear of missing out, and don't fall into more is the plan. But the other side of this that nobody talks about, but I do, is that people will go like, "Oh, why are you spending so much money going to all these different events? Like, why are you doing this? God, what a waste of time. Like, you could just kind of hang back with us and be by the beach." And one thing some families do is they go like, "Hey, we're going to go to this event and we're going to make it a family vacation." And I'm all for that. I think that's great. Right? There's like, as long as you're not putting your family into trouble, right, financially, but only that, right? Anybody who tries to step into a family's business, and say like, oh, they're putting themselves in harm's way, they're spending too much money on on um, on this, like, that's going to be your choice, right? And you make adult decisions spending money that kids can't comprehend. That's all on you. So live with that and be happy with that. But if that's going to be part of this trip, then go for it, right? Like, there's nothing wrong about that. But just be mindful that if your athlete steps into something that's a little too heavy, a little too deep, right? And they have a bad experience, that may pressure them a little bit and go like, maybe this isn't going to go work out. So that there's a balance to that, as well. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. So if that made sense for you, do me a favor, hit the like button. Leave me a comment. That'd be much appreciated. And by all means, make sure you share these with friends or family or coaches who need to hear them, and steer them towards mental performance school when you got a chance, because I'd love to have them. All right, so that's awesome.